Spring and summer is a great time to tackle some of those habitat improvement projects that you have on your to-do list, especially this summer when you might find yourself with a little bit of extra time. And while all habitat managers dream of massive soybean food plots, large tracts of early successional growth from recent prescribed fires, and all the fancy equipment that you could dream of to complete these tasks, most of us don't have neither the land nor the budget for this type of stuff. When budget and space become a very limiting factor, you have to be very careful on what projects you decide to tackle and when. So in this video, we're going to go over 4 big habitat improvements you can make on a small budget. But before we get into the tips, do me a favor, and if this is your first time on my channel, hit that subscribe button. And make sure you hit that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. Also, if you like the tips, give me a thumbs up because it really helps the video get out there. And the first big habitat improvement on a small budget is you have to identify the limiting factor on your property. And honestly, this isn't just the first tip, it is the first step you need to take before you do any project on your property. Anything you do needs to have the biggest impact, and you have to make sure that you're identifying the biggest need first. It doesn't make much sense to add a bunch of food plots if there is no shortage of food, or adding little water holes if there is an abundance of water on that property. Start by looking at an aerial map and identify the things that your property has that your neighboring properties don't have, or what those properties do have and you're lacking. You also need to find maybe something that's missing from you and your neighbors. Maybe you have mostly timber, but all your surrounding properties are large ag farms. They've got soybeans and corn and all that stuff. So it doesn't make much sense for you to use up a lot of your timber, this valuable resource in the middle of all this farmland, and turn it into a big feeding plot, a massive 2 or 3 acre soybean plot. That just doesn't make much sense. The point is you're trying to attract as many deer or turkey or whatever species you're trying to attract to your land, trying to give them a reason to go to your property and not somebody else's. And if you're just adding stuff that the neighbor already has, there's no real reason for them to change what they're already doing. And so with that information, you can move on to the second tip. And if you are lacking some bedding, or you need to enhance the bedding areas so you can attract deer to your property, then you need to look into some hinge cutting. Hinge cutting can be a hotly debated topic, depending on who your habitat expert of choice is. Hinge cutting is definitely a beneficial tool, but it can definitely very easily be overused. Hinge cutting is a great tool for opening up the canopy and allowing more sunlight to hit the floor. It also does a great job of creating some horizontal cover. My favorite way to use it is some edge feathering next to some small hidey-hole food plots that I've created. It's a very low budget, actually it could be as high budget as you want it to be. You can use something as simple as a handsaw or a chainsaw to create this hinge. Look for fast-growing, non-mass producing trees like maples and cut them about 70% of the way through. Once you get that far, just gently push it over to create that hinge. Hopefully you do it in the correct way where it allows that tree to stay alive, and then that stump will actually sprout. It provides great cover and puts some food down at a deer's level. Now, depending on what you want this hinge cut to accomplish depends on how high you make this hinge. If you want deer to be able to travel underneath it or bed underneath it, cut it about chest high. If you want it to be more of a barrier, then cut it about waist high. Do not cut mass-producing trees like oaks or hickories or chestnuts unless they are poorly growing trees and you're trying to favor a better tree nearby. And the third small budget improvement you can do this summer is going to directly affect how you hunt this fall, and that is to put in a few hidey-hole food plots. When you looked on that aerial map, if you notice that your property is surrounded by large ag fields, you're not going to be able to compete food-wise with those things. But what you can do is try to influence the deer's travel routes going to these big fields. These hidey-hole food plots are half an acre or less of food that is extremely attractive during the hunting season. Place them between bedding areas and those large ag fields, and you can hopefully funnel them into a good shot opportunity. My favorite mixture for these hidey-hole food plots is a mixture of radishes, turnips, winter wheat, and clover. This provides great hunting during each phase of the hunting season and even into turkey season next spring. And the fourth big habitat improvement you can make on a small budget is to do a small bow stand burn. Prescribed fire is probably the best way to provide new, fresh growth for deer and turkeys. Not only do they feed on this stuff, but they bed in it as well. And we would all like to be able to do these large tract burns every few years, but in reality we either lack the manpower, the training, or just the permission to conduct them. A bow stand burn, however, provides an explosion of fresh forbs and grasses that deer will love within bow range. Use a backpack blower and 2 or 3 of your friends, and make a fire break in a 30-yard radius around your favorite tree stand. Now make sure you have the proper training to do this. A YouTube video does not count, and make sure you have more help than you think you need. There is a very, very thin line between a controlled burn and just setting your woods on fire. And a bonus tip, a bonus big habitat improvement that you can make on a small budget that I thought of while I was filming this. I thought I would include it just because maybe the first one you think probably doesn't count, is while you're out there doing your habitat work, or you're checking your cameras, or you're just out looking around, find some invasive species and try to eliminate them. And this can be as labor intensive as you want it to be, or not be. What I try to do, down where I hunt, autumn olive is a big problem. It's probably every forest opening that we have down there is just lined with autumn olive. So what I try to do is every time I go down there to do something, and I remember to bring my herbicide, is I try to at least pick one spot, and I try to eliminate some autumn olive right there. It might take me a long time to really get rid of it, but it's a lot better than thinking you got to go down there and do your entire property at one time. And it's a big improvement once you start clearing this stuff out. And so that was 4 big habitat improvements, or actually 5 if you count the bonus one, that you can start doing now on a small budget. If you have any more small budget habitat improvement projects that you're trying to complete, or that you want to share, leave those down in the comments below. And hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.